Yo, what's up, everyone? This is Terry with College Football Stop, bringing you another show today, November 17th, 2023. Uh, as I usually say, man, I'm excited for the conclusion of this season. I'm excited for, not that we won't have football anymore, but just to watch some of the games play out that are left, man, it should be super fun and super interesting how all this plays out. So, obviously, not obviously, I don't know if you guys seen it. There's a big update in the Michigan situation. I want to get into that and talk about kind of what I expect to happen from this point going forward. And then I want to discuss the Ohio State versus Minnesota game. I got some bold predictions and then some things to watch out for in the game. As we're projecting Ohio State onto being a potential championship team, obviously got to beat Michigan. I think they'll do that and then go on to win the Big Ten. And we'll see what happens in the playoffs, man. I'm super excited. This team has to make the playoffs. This is one of Ryan Day's best teams that he's had so far, in my opinion. Overall, as a team, obviously there's some issues on the offensive side of the ball. But all right, let's go ahead and get into it. I want to talk about, like I said, the Michigan update. Basically, Michigan, Jim Harbaugh got suspended because they cheated. 3-game suspension from the Big Ten, which is to finish out the last 3 games of the season. For Michigan, that's Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State. Everybody from Michigan, the beat writers, the fans, even the president and the AD were kind of leading on like they were going to fight this. They apparently filed a temporary restraining order, or TRO is what they call it, which was supposed to kind of block the NCAA from their punishment, I guess, or at least extend it out so that Harbaugh could coach the Maryland and the Ohio State game. I kind of always was on the side of I don't think that they're ever going to fight the Big Ten in court, and I've kind of stood on that the whole time. Like I always said that I think the whole process of filing that TRO and all that stuff was the Michigan athletic director and the Michigan president trying to make sure that the fan base and the university didn't turn on them for not fighting for Jim Harbaugh. That's kind of where I've always been with it. And honestly, I thought I was wrong once they filed it, but now they've kind of walked it back. And so it's essentially the Michigan dropped the TRO or whatever you want to call it, whatever the actual legal term for it is. They dropped it. They were supposed to have the court hearing tomorrow. They said, no, we're not going to go through with this. We will just accept the 3-game suspension that the Big Ten originally wrote out to them. So that's interesting because what that means is that Harbaugh does not get to coach against Ohio State now. So for me, I don't like that really because I wanted to see Harbaugh out there. I wanted Ryan Day to go out and beat Harbaugh on a fair playing field, which, like I've been saying this whole time, I think is going to happen. I think that what Michigan did ultimately just took away the ability for Ohio State's coaching staff to have an impact on the game. I think Ohio State has a better coaching staff than Michigan. I think that their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator are better than what Michigan has. That's just my opinion. Obviously, looking at the last 2 years, Michigan's defensive coordinator McDonald is now with the Ravens, I think, and they're a really good defense. So obviously, these guys are still good coordinators. They're good football minds. I'm not saying that they're not. All that I'm saying is that I think that Ohio State can outcoach them, and they took that ability away by cheating. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but yeah. So Harbaugh will not be on the field. It looks like Sharon Moore will be Michigan's interim head coach. Obviously, this does make the game super important. I shouldn't even say it makes it important because it already was. It makes the game just that much more important for Ryan Day. You need to go out here and take care of business. It is a bad look. I know a lot of Michigan fans have been trying to get Ohio State fans to say this just so they have it on record or whatever. But it would be a bad look for Ryan Day if he were to lose to an interim head coach in Sharon Moore. It would look just equally as bad if Jim Harbaugh was coaching and Ryan Day lost to Jim Harbaugh. So it's not even like it's in terms of looking at it from a Ryan Day perspective, it didn't matter who was the coach for Michigan. He needs to beat Michigan because the last 2 years happened. And even though those last 2 years are tainted by them cheating, they still happened. Ryan Day had to deal with that. Ohio State fans had to deal with that. And they need to go out there and take care of business. Like I said, I think they will. Another thing about the Jim Harbaugh situation. So Michigan put out a statement, and I'm sorry, Michigan put out a statement, and the NCAA. I'm sorry. Let me gather my thoughts. I'm going a little too fast. Anyway, Michigan put out a statement, and the Big Ten also put out a statement, and they kind of said two different things. Michigan said the Big Ten decided to drop this, and the Big Ten was like Michigan decided to drop their litigation or whatever. And it was pointed out by one of the big Michigan pages that Michigan was the plaintiff in the situation. So in order for it to be dropped, the Big Ten could not drop it. Michigan would have had to do that. So that whole idea is just stupid. I think that a lot of the fans are thinking that they got a deal, and I don't think that's the case. What I think happened here is I think the Big Ten did not do their own investigation. The Big Ten was relying on the information that the NCAA had, which was enough for them to administer this 3-game suspension to Jim Harbaugh. I think the Big Ten was going to conduct their own investigation, and Michigan decided it's probably not in our best interest to do that. That's where I'm at with it. That's what I think. And I think that, like I said, the AD and the president were kind of putting their neck out there for Harbaugh just to save face because they knew that this was ultimately going to lead in Harbaugh not being the coach at Michigan. So that's where I'm at with it. But the NCAA, I'm sorry, the Big Ten did state in their letter that they put out that it does not mean that they are done with any disciplinary action towards Michigan. So basically, the Big Ten is not going to do an investigation, but the NCAA is. And if the NCAA does find any new information about the situation, they are going to share that information with the Big Ten, and the Big Ten can decide at that point if there is an additional punishment that needs to be administered to Michigan. So that's kind of where it's at. The Big Ten is like, okay, we administered our punishment with the information we had. We'll leave it up to the NCAA to find anything else. But if they do, we still reserve the right to come out and administer more punishment, because if you did it, and one of the ways that in the Big Ten rule book, it does state that they can get information from anywhere. So, and I, reading over that information, it states that they are allowed to get information from any source. That's kind of how it's worded. So if the NCAA shares the information with the Big Ten, which they've already been doing in the first place, there could still be more punishment. I don't see that happening because I don't necessarily think that the NCAA is going to be like super fast on investigating. So this is probably the last thing that will happen this year in terms of this situation. Obviously, if new stuff is found, it'll probably get leaked. But in terms of like actual disciplinary action, I feel like there's probably not going to be too much more, which basically leaves Michigan without Harbaugh for 3 games, and then he can come back in the postseason. So the last question I wanted to ask on this, and if you guys are in the chat, answer this for me. Has Jim Harbaugh coached his last game at Michigan? And I'm going to tell you guys why I think that he has coached his last game at Michigan. But answer that in the chat for me. Do you think that he will coach another game this year or even going into next year? Because where I'm at with it, I think that Jim Harbaugh is probably done at Michigan. And the reason why I think it is a little bit, I get a little bit biased maybe. I think that Ohio State's going to beat Michigan. That's where I'm at. I've said that multiple times during this show alone, but I think that not having Connor Stallions out there to help them is going to be a big impact. And I think this Ohio State team is just really good. But I think that when Ohio State does beat Michigan, that will knock them out of playoff contention. So with Michigan being knocked out of playoff contention, I think that Michigan is going to, at that point, move and release Jim Harbaugh to try to save face. Like I've been saying the whole time, I think that their president and AD are not about it. They're not really trying to defend Jim Harbaugh. I think that they're all just trying to save face. And once Michigan loses to Ohio State, instead of letting Jim Harbaugh come and coach that bowl game that he typically loses anyway, and half the players are not going to play, I think that at that point they'll kind of be like, okay, it's time for us to start doing some things internally to get this situation taken care of. That way it doesn't just come down to the NCAA, because the NCAA will be harsh. I mean, they tried to suspend Jim Harbaugh for 4 games for the whole cheeseburger recruiting scandal. And Michigan said, no, we'll administer a 3-game suspension. The NCAA still has to decide on what they want to do with that. But I just think that if Michigan loses to Ohio State, which I think will happen, at that point, the athletic director and the president at Michigan will go into attack mode on Jim Harbaugh and the rest of their staff. I really think that at that point you'll end up seeing probably Jim Harbaugh and at least one of the coordinators, maybe not Sharon Moore, but probably Jesse Minter will end up being released, and they're just basically trying to lessen that penalty from the NCAA. So we'll see how that plays out. That's my thoughts on it. I don't know, man. It's a crazy situation, but just trying to think of it logically and not be too biased on it is kind of where I want to be with it. I know I'm biased in the fact that I think Ohio State will beat Michigan, but if Michigan does beat Ohio State and they were going into the Big Ten championship, the college football playoffs, I think that at that point, the athletic director and the president or whatever for Michigan, whoever makes the choice, I think they would continue to fight for it, and Jim Harbaugh would probably coach out the rest of this year. But I don't see that happening, so we'll go from there. All right, I want to move on from some of the Michigan stuff and get into this Ohio State versus Minnesota game. I have some hot takes, bold predictions. I didn't even take any down. I like to kind of do these ones live off the top of the head just because I think that it's more fun that way, and I come up with some pretty cool things. So basically, these are takes that I think could potentially be true, but are obviously supposed to be bold. So I usually start off with a TreVeyon Henderson prediction, so I'm going to continue with that and stick with TreVeyon Henderson. And I think that in this Minnesota game, I'm going to say TreVeyon Henderson averages at least 7 yards per carry. His average this year, let me see. Let me pull that up real quick. But anyway, his average this year is I think like 6.5, something like that. And I think that he'll average over that again in this game. I'm not going to give him a total yardage or anything like that prediction because I think that he's not going to play much. I feel like TreVeyon Henderson will probably play the first half, if that. And then because Ryan Day knows that they need him to be healthy for the Michigan game. That's just what it comes down to. So I'm going to say he averages at least 7 yards per carry in this game. And he's averaging 6.3 right now. So it'll be above his average, which is not super crazy, but that's what we're going with. And then I'll move on to another one that I have on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to say that Sonny Styles will get an interception in this game. He obviously hasn't had one yet this year, but I think that he can do it. I think that he's in a good spot to do it. And it's just a matter of time because it's just a matter of time because I feel like he's been close a couple times. And he's just continuing to learn and get better at that bandit position, which was not his natural position or not the position that he came into the year expecting to play. Obviously, Latham Ransom being out, he's playing a different position. So, and then I'm going to go with another prediction. I'm going to say that CJ Hicks will have an interception or a sack in this game. CJ Hicks will have an interception or a sack. He got out there last week against Michigan State, and honestly, like he looked like the freak athlete that I expected him to all year. I know he hasn't gotten a ton of reps this year, so you don't really have a ton to go off of with him. And when he did play, he did make some mistakes and was kind of in the wrong gaps and stuff like that. But watching him against Michigan State, man, he looked like the athlete that I expected him to be this year. And like I said, he looks like someone who is just the best athlete on the field. And as long as he's seeing things right and reading things right, he has the speed and athleticism to turn what would be a 1 yard gain or a 2 yard gain into like a tackle for loss. We've seen that against Michigan State. They had a really kind of well blocked play, and he just outran the play to the outside and smacked the guy in the backfield, got a tackle for loss. He also had another one, which it didn't go down in the books as a tackle for loss, but it was, though. He tackled the guy, and they handed the ball off. He tackled him, and the ball was, the line of scrimmage moved backwards. So it should have been a tackle for loss, you would think, but whatever. Again, he just looks like a freak athlete out there, and I think he ends up with an interception or a sack in this game. The next one I'm going to go with, I want to kind of stick with some of the backup guys. All right, I got one. Devin Brown will throw 2 touchdowns in this game. Now, that's kind of a wild one because he's only thrown 2 touchdowns all year, but I think that he's going to get a chance in this game to really get some reps. I think that it'll be kind of over with in the first half. And then when you go on to the second half, I think they'll kind of let Devin Brown take over from there as long as he's healthy. And I think that Ryan Day will let him run the offense a little bit because ultimately, I heard another guy on a podcast say this. I forget who it was, but he said you need to make sure that your backup situation at every position is as solid as it can be right now because you're about to go into this Michigan game that's going to be a dirty ass game. And I believe that. I mean, I don't know. I with all the shit going on and everything that's been coming out, there's going to be a lot of trash talking. There's going to be a lot of probably dirty hits. Guys, uh, you know, hitting each other after plays, holding on a little bit longer to your ankle when you're going through a or when you're getting tackled. So I think that they need to really make sure that their depth is good in all positions, and that includes the quarterback. Like I said, if Devin Brown's healthy, he goes out there and throws 2 touchdowns. And I'll tell you, one of them will be to Carnell Tate, and one of them will be to Jayden Ballard. That's bold. You want to be bold? That's fucking bold. JB don't really get any playing time, but hey, man, my last one that I have here is I'm gonna stick with Jayden Ballard, the guy that I just talked about. Going to be his biggest game of his career, and I think that he gets a punt return for a touchdown in this game. That's something that hasn't happened in forever. I don't even know when. It's been like 8, 9, 10 years since Ohio State's had a punt return for a touchdown. But he almost broke one last game. I think that Jayden Ballard's starting to get a little more confidence back there where he can try to juke some people. And if he gets an open field, it's going to be a problem because he's arguably the fastest person on Ohio State's team. All right, so that was it for my bold predictions. I didn't even write them down here. So I got Trevion Henderson for 7 yards yards per carry. And then I got Sonny Styles for an interception. I got CJ Hicks with an interception or a sack. And then I got Devin Brown, 2 throwing touchdowns, one to Jayden Ballard, one to Carnell Tate, and then Jayden Ballard with a punt return for a touchdown. All right, hopefully some of those will come true. I need to see a punt return for a touchdown, man. Listen, I told all the lies in the offseason about Jayden Ballard. I thought he was going to be a starter on this team for real. And a lot of people were like, nah, he's not good enough. And I'm like, bro, that speed needs to be utilized. He ain't got no smoke all year. It is what it is, man. But he's been really solid in punt return. Honestly, not having Emeka back there and having him has been a huge uptick. We could even getting like a 10, 15-yard punt return helps with field position when our offense has been kind of struggling all year. So, all right. And then the last thing I want to talk about today is just when you're watching this Minnesota game, what are some things that you should be watching out for? I know this is not the most exciting game, especially being before the Michigan game, but there are things that this Ohio State team needs to work on. So things that you should watch out for, in my opinion, watch out for the center position. Carson Hinsman honestly had his worst game against Michigan State, and I've been one that's been defending him. I like his attitude. I like how he plays with aggression, but he was kind of getting ragdolled in the Michigan State game, and Michigan has one of the best interior defensive lines in college football. So Ohio State did kind of like try Matt Jones out at that position and then brought in Enoch Vamahi at the right guard position where Matt Jones was. I still don't like the idea of making an offensive line change. Overall, the line was just starting to gel. The run game was just starting to click. I mean, obviously, if you have someone out there who has a bad snap and also is kind of getting beat off the ball, that's going to be a problem. I just don't know if making that change is the right move right now. And also, I'm not sure that Enoch Vamahi is the guy that I want out there against Michigan's guards either. So, I don't know. Watch out for the offensive line. Watch out for Carson Hinsman and see if he's playing better because I have a feeling that kid has fire under him, and I think that he'll look to play his best game against Minnesota. Another thing to watch out for is Ohio State's defensive kind of alignments and formations. So Minnesota is not a big threat to throw the ball, and I think that that's kind of how Ohio State's going to look at Michigan also. So I expect to see some kind of different alignments and different personnel groupings in this Minnesota game, which will kind of let us know what they're planning on doing against Michigan. I'm sure that not one of you guys noticed it, but I noticed when I was watching the All-22 that Ohio State against Michigan State on a third down, and I think it was like 13, so it was obviously a long yardage down. You would expect them to like play some kind of coverage. Ohio State had 5 defensive linemen on the field at this time. So it was like a Rushman package, but with 5 people instead of 4. And from left to right, it was JTT, Jack Sawyer, Tyleek Williams, Caden Curry, and Kenyatta Jackson. And they got pressure on the quarterback on that play. So just be on the lookout for stuff like that. Like, they're gonna mix some things up. They're gonna get some guys out there that are not out there a ton. There could be, you could see Sonny kind of rotating down as a linebacker, just to make the set a lot heavier. I'm excited just to watch. Man, I love watching Ohio State play, especially this year. Their defense is just doing some crazy things, and I think they just keep getting better and more aggressive as the year goes on. And as they're getting more aggressive, they're not giving up more explosive plays. They've only given up 1 this year over 40 yards, and that was that play to Rutgers where they did that fumble-rooski shit. And, I mean, honestly, just one guy needed to set the edge, and that play was blown up. But then whoever that was, I think it might have been Cody Simon, kind of dove over the lineman, and they got the edge on him. So, I don't know. Those are the things I think you watch out for. Just, like I said, kind of what Ohio State's doing defensively, different than what they normally do. And then look out for the offensive line, because I think everywhere else, Ohio State's solid. I think, I don't really think that there's anything else that I'm going to be looking at to be like, oh, maybe like the wide receiver health and the wide receiver rotation, because I think that Carnell Tate's probably needs to be starting, needs to be playing more often. And then keep a lookout and see if Emeka looks healthy this weekend, because he's been getting a lot of disrespect lately for reasons I don't know why. Because Emeka is no doubt. I mean, coming into the year, he was like a no doubt first round pick, and then obviously he's gotten injured. But before he got injured, he was playing well. He wasn't out there struggling. So if Emeka's back, that drastically helps this offense. So keep a lookout for his health, and hopefully they'll get him going and get him a little into a rhythm this weekend. I know they're probably also going to want to get Marvin Harrison Jr. his touches, because it's Heisman Marv, Heisman Harrison. Here comes the sun. That's the Ohio State slogan for Marvin Harrison Jr.'s Heisman campaign, which I think is dope. But anyway, that's it for the show today, guys. I got to wrap it up. I'm about to go see my wife real quick at work and see what's up. But I'll be live every day at 10 a.m. See here. Obviously, hit the follow button, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can find me on Twitter, too. I'm constantly posting stats and stuff on there, maybe talking a little shit on there. But that's at CFB_stop. Thanks for coming, guys. You have a great day.